from Oz Development, and welcome to today's webinar on streamlining MAS 90 and MAS 200 fulfillment. I'm here with Troy Graham, Director of Business Development, and I'd like to first of all thank everyone for taking the time today to attend the session here. Just technically, as we go through it, feel free to ask questions in the Ask a Question box. We'll address those questions as we go throughout it. We will have some time at the end of the session to address the questions we don't get to as we're going through the content. And for everyone on the line, you're all muted. So again, if you have questions, just submit them through the GoToWebinar toolbar. So let's get going. Again, I'd like to welcome, and Troy, if you want to just say a couple words about your background and today's session.
Hi, everyone. This is Troy Graham. Thank you for joining us. My role here, I work very, very closely with many of the team members from UPS and customers, and I've been doing that for just about 10 years now. So I spend a lot of my time working with customers and evaluating and looking at their processes within their warehouse and helping to define some of the options and solutions that we're going to show you and talk to you a little bit about today and how they can be applied to your business.
Okay, so in terms of today's topics, welcome and introductions we've done. Just going to give you a bit of background on Oz Development, the company. We'll step through some examples of our customers that use OZLINK, MAS 90 and 200 specific customers and the value they've achieved. We'll then go through sort of end-to-end fulfillment process and where we see opportunities in speaking to a broader customer base, but also MAS 90, 200 specific customers as well, where that fulfillment can be improved and typically where some pain points are based on the business. We will go through a live demo of OZLINK. So OZLINK is the actual product from Oz Development that does the integration and the streamlining. And then we'll wrap up with some conclusions and also answer any questions that we haven't addressed throughout the session. So Oz Development has been around over 10 years. We have over 10,000 customers, really ranging from a wide variety of different industries, small entrepreneurial companies, large global 1,000 companies. Our domain is really all around that warehouse, that fulfillment process. The team here has 20 years experience in building solutions that really streamline that shipping and that fulfillment process. Recently, earlier this year, we got awarded strategic level with UPS in the UPS Ready program, and that's something that we're very proud of, and it just shows a very strong working relationship with the folks at UPS. In terms of the solutions we provide in the MAS 90-200 segment, we really do integration and extensions around that order management process. So there's sort of a couple of different flavors to that. On the front end, as orders are coming in with new growth of channels, like the e-commerce channels, things coming from a website maybe run by Magento, or people selling things on the marketplaces, eBay, Amazon, feeding those orders into the order entry system, the MAS system, and then how that gets fulfilled. So today's focus really is on the right side, and that's integrating the MAS systems with WorldShip and providing extensions to optimize that. So that might be improving the pick, pack, ship process, creating custom documentation, adding business rules, and we'll go into a lot more detail as we step through the slides here today.
So one of the things we thought we'd do is start with just an example of a customer and some of their particular challenges. So we're going to take a quick look at this company called Doctor's Best, and you can see a quick screenshot of their website here. They sell, mainly B2C, selling to end consumers. They were going through a lot of growth inside of their business, and they saw shipping mistakes and just shipping performance becoming a bottleneck inside of their business. So what they were looking to do was to ensure that the UPS software could talk to their internal, in their case it happened to be a MAS 200 system. And they wanted to make sure that there was no retyping of information as those orders were processed. They wanted to also make sure that MAS was updated accurately with tracking information, so we could send off email notifications and really drive down some of those customer service type calls. So with Doctor's Best, we implemented an OZLINK solution that really focused on reducing the amount of time it took to process an individual package. And they wanted to make sure that their warehouse could scale and their package volume could scale without adding additional staff and workstations. So today, the process of shipping an order, which we'll see in a couple of minutes, that used to take 1 to 2 minutes and required lots of manual data entry, both into UPS WorldShip and then back into Mass 200 after that shipment was fulfilled, is now reduced down to a mouse click, put the box on the scale, and tell WorldShip to print your shipping labels. So the process is really, really highly streamlined from what it was in the past. You'll see some key benefits down in the bottom right-hand corner. We've talked a little bit about some of that efficiency, but the key to me is really that middle bullet point that takes a process that they used to spend 3 hours on is now down to a 30-minute process. So that's a significant improvement, and it's reduced the number of errors because we've eliminated the need for somebody to manually type in information, like I said, both into UPS WorldShip software and then back into Mass after that shipment has been processed. Anything else, Brian, that you can think of that I maybe forgot to mention there on the Doctor's Best side?
No, just in terms of the mix of channels, so they do both sort of B2B, wholesale distribution type business, and B2C, and that often creates more complexity back in the warehouse in terms of remembering how to treat the different orders. There may be different business rules. There could be different documents needed to be produced, and being able to sort of automate and sort of really take any decisions out of that process back in the warehouse based on those inputs on the front end is a key element to really driving that efficiency.
It makes me think of a business rule example that I thought I would mention here that I had forgotten about. There was a portion of the Doctor's Best business that was a wholesale business, as Brian had just mentioned, and one of their challenges, they had situations where they were shipping out orders to wholesalers that hadn't paid a previous invoice. So they wanted to create a business rule that if the person out in the shipping department went to process an order, and according to Mass 200, that customer was on credit hold, it would stop that process and prompt the shipper with a warning type message to tell them not to ship that order. And that's just one example, but to me it's a powerful example because it's leveraging the Mass 90 system, the system of record, or Mass 200, excuse me, and that's got input from, in this case, a finance and accounting team, and how OZLINK can automate the business rule in the warehouse to manage the rules that are driven from the front office. And again, that's a simple example. There's many other examples based on things like order value or destination that we'll talk about some of those in the future, but I thought that was a good relevant example of a business rule that can be enabled, and the key is that it's automated. So I don't need to rely on the person in the warehouse to be thinking a lot about the business rules or remembering a series of business rules. The software can be smart enough if there's a temporary employee in there to make sure that those business rules are followed.
Yeah, I mean, another one that's commonly used capability is extending an email to your customer saying, hey, it's been shipped with detail and maybe even branded with your brand to reinforce that and provide a better customer experience. But again, there might be rules on, depending on that channel, that might be something you want to do. Certainly to your wholesale customers, that gives them a simple sort of almost ASN type capability, gives them visibility to what's coming in, reinforces the value of your brand. Whereas if that product is sold through sort of Amazon, eBay, those things aren't really even allowed because those marketplaces are generating that and they're trying to maintain that customer communication. You really don't want the person in the warehouse even needing to understand any of that stuff. That should just flow automatically based on your business rules and where you're focusing your growth opportunities. The second case study here is a snack food processor. They create packaged nuts and distribute that locally to small stores and also an e-commerce channel. They had to upgrade based on their growth. They do about 250 shipments during peak, especially as it comes up to the holiday season. A lot of gift type packaging and those sort of things. And so they upgraded to Mass 200. They had a separate world ship system that was processing, had a separate address book for those shipments. The front office was producing the shipment information, the pack slip, and the ship label at the time when they took the order entry. That created a number of issues in terms of, there's a lot of clerical work in the background, also synchronizing the database as the addresses changed, is there proper address validation, all those sort of things. It just created quite a bit of overhead that was costly based on their growth. So what they did is they did a straightforward integration, taking the orders out of the Mass 200 system, running them into WorldShip, a couple simple business rules to pick the right service, and then writing back those costs and the tracking number back into the Mass 200 system. And it really virtually eliminated 100% of the data entry. And also at the ship station, they pushed that work from the front office. It was now integrated seamlessly to the Mass 200 system, accessible at that ship station right in the warehouse.
Okay. The next company that I'm going to talk a little bit about on the right-hand side is kind of a classic wholesale distributor. They sold lots of sort of heating, lighting types of equipment, and they had a Mass 200 system, shipping 75 to 100 shipments per day, and that was across a combination of small package and UPS LTL freight shipments. One of the challenges that they faced, and they were in I would consider kind of a highly competitive market. They were trying to increase their e-commerce business in addition to their traditional wholesale business. But one of their challenges on the wholesale side was timing. So some of their products were sort of specialty lighting type products that you might see in a restaurant or a catered event or something. And time in transit became very, very important in many cases to getting an order or making sure that an order was delivered on time for a special event. So what we did here was we leveraged some UPS time in transit capabilities and integrated that into the Mass 200 sales order entry process. And the way that worked was I could be on the phone talking to someone about an order, and as I'm talking to them, I could say, great, your event is in Chicago, our warehouse is here in Boston. I need to know how long is it going to take for that shipment to get to you, before I place that order. So we gave them a simple button that they would use right at the time of sales order entry that would calculate time in transit, and it would show the telesalesperson, what are my options? Can I send this UPS ground and get it there on time? Does it need to go via 3-day service or 2-day service or next day service? So it was very helpful for their team to ensure that their customers knew if we place this order, it's going to get here on time, and we've made an intelligent decision about the service level that we've selected. The other two things that I like to mention about this company, one is that the staff in the warehouse at this company didn't really use Mass 200, meaning the person in the warehouse was really driving the shipment process off of a paper-based picking ticket. So that person would have a picking ticket, and prior to OZLINK, they would go to WorldShip and they would type in the address and pick a service level. Well, with the updated OZLINK process, that person would go back to the shipping computer and they would use a simple, inexpensive handheld scanner to scan the barcode on the picking ticket, and OZLINK would retrieve from Mass 90 all of the relevant shipping address, service level information, populate that into WorldShip, and then as the label printed, it would go back and update Mass 200. But it did that without the user being inside of Mass 200. In this particular organization, they just felt more comfortable with that particular process. One last item that, as we see a lot in e-commerce channels growing, they have a specific business rule around international shipping. So they may sell, for example, a number of different size candles. And they wanted to have a process in place where the international paperwork, the commercial invoice, didn't necessarily reflect that I've got a 3-inch candle, a 4-inch candle, and a 5-inch candle. They wanted to have that consolidated to say, well, we're shipping a dozen candles. So in their particular solution, we had a business rule that would consolidate like line items into a single line item on a commercial invoice for international shipping. So it simplified the paperwork. And the reason they want to do it is they found the fewer line items on that invoice, products just seem to go through customs, I think, a little bit more smoothly and without quite as much scrutiny. So another example of some automation of a business rule, in this case to help an emerging and a growing e-commerce channel that they were working in.
So now let's take a look at the areas of fulfillment that we can really focus on. So really divide it into sort of three categories here: streamline the internal sort of pick, pack, ship process, improving the customer service and communication, then at the end of the line, really automating the production of the various shipping documents. And we'll drill into a few of these in more detail. But things like streamlining pick, pack, ship, we have a lot of customers who maybe they're moving things from the front office to the back office. They want to produce, into the warehouse. They want to produce a single pick ticket with the UPS shipping label on it. So you don't have multiple pieces of paper. You don't have things stapled together. It just improves the accuracy of getting the right shipment out to the right customer. Additional based on the type of things you may be shipping, maybe a batch ship type process is effective. Shipping many of the same things, let's say 25 or 30 of the same weight, same type item things to different people, and really streamlining that process. That's a big opportunity. Troy mentioned the barcode scanning, and a fairly low-hanging fruit, if it's something that you're not already doing, is being able to really scan those items, eliminates errors, speeds the processing time, all of those key benefits. And then automating business rules around the service selection. And I'll talk more about that in a couple slides. In terms of servicing the customers, I mean, the channels in our customer base are expanding. So there's more and more channels, and that might be, as we talked earlier, might be, say, eBay, Amazon, wholesale, e-commerce. I was at a session last week where customers were talking about setting up multiple, and we have customers who do this, multiple websites depending on sort of the category of items they're selling and the target segment they're selling to. So again, from a fulfillment warehouse perspective, those are great opportunities to grow the revenue, but if they're not managed, they add complexity back in the warehouse. So, being able to service those various channels in an effective way, and that might be, we talked about branded pack slips. Maybe there's some customizations on a label that can help the customer. Simple email notifications, emailing out that shipment's gone out. Here's the items in the shipment. In things like apparel, where you're maybe automatically generating a return label, make it easier for that customer if you have to get that back. Both easier for the customer, but also when things come in, you get better visibility to things coming in, and the processing on the inbound side is much more streamlined and effective as well. Drop ship capabilities, that might be you leveraging a supplier, or on behalf of your customer, being able to do drop ships and service your customer in a more effective way to win more business with them. And then finally, the various documents produced. So that might be shipping to a large retail store with compliant labels and generating an ASN. The mix of, the UPS label of freight type shipments, and those mixes. International, we talked about, again, can be quite complex. And if typically they're a smaller percentage of our customer shipments, but they take a disproportionate amount of time. They're more complex and more error prone. So automating that process can be a key area of improvement. In terms of business rules, so it's a general term, but essentially what it means is being able to automatically select the UPS service and options based on really any attribute of the shipment. That could be weight, things maybe under a pound go SurePost, over a pound go ground. Those types of decisions that you really want to automate. Maybe value, you may want to put insurance on certain things that are overvalue, or maybe it's valuable, so you want proof of delivery. Maybe it's based on the address where it's going. It's going to a more urban environment, can't be left out on at the front door. So again, maybe you want proof of delivery, those sort of things. It could be based on your customer. If you're doing the drop ship, obviously there could be what accounts to use. Things in terms of what do you charge the customer versus is it negotiated rate versus published rate. All of those various rules and how that gets handled in that integration and written back is important. It could be based on Troy's example of the case study. It needs to be at the customer by a certain time. So leveraging time in transit to pick the right service to get that shipment there and to meet that customer need.
I mean, to me, the key to the business rules is just stepping back from your day-to-day operation and looking and seeing, are there decisions that we're asking the staff in the warehouse to make? If so, can we create a business rule to automate that, to streamline that, and ensure that business rule is not forgotten? I tend to think about it in a manner of, can I put a temporary employee back there and feel comfortable that they're able to process the shipments that I need processed? Anything can drive the business rule. These are just some common things that we find people use to drive those business rules as indicators of a business rule that's needed.
Now, just a couple of examples of the features you talked about. In this case, producing a combination pack slip and ship label. So you have at the top here, in this case, it's an Oz development branded. It could be, your company brand, your template to use that the pick ticket and the label on the bottom. So maybe producing this right with your stack of, let's say, 10, 15 a day. You have someone going through the warehouse picking these items, putting them in a box, applying the label right there. So you've sort of consolidated your pick, pack, ship station. In this case, you'd want the weights to be available in the system so you can produce the label up front from the picking to really leverage this. And sort of a batch scenario becomes this becomes very effective in a batch scenario.
One other just scenario that we've seen that's used a lot is in return services. So if you're in an industry like apparel where your customers are expecting a return services label to be in the box, or a service industry where you're sending out a replacement part and an old defective part needs to come back to you, this document could include a return services label as opposed to an outbound shipping label like you see here.
Then a couple of examples of improving the communications with the customer. On the left, you have an example of a branded email that goes out and highlights, really confirms that shipment real time as it's processed. On the right are branded pack slips for the dropship scenario. So if you're shipping on behalf of a large retailer, often they'll mandate that brand and that look really makes the consumer comfortable that it actually, that where they put their credit card in and made that order is, in fact, whether it's JCPenney, Sears, what have you. And being able to streamline and automate this based on that import channel and getting it right becomes, obviously very important for that customer relationship.
And it's often an area where I think it's very, very manual process. Many companies, we were talking with one recently where they had different color sheets of paper for their picking tickets. So if it was, in this example, a Sears order, they had a yellow picking ticket. If it was a JCPenney order, it had a white picking ticket. The goal was that when they printed out a packing slip that went in the box, to give the user an opportunity to say, I need to make sure I've got a Sears branded packing slip because I had a yellow picking ticket. Well, as you can imagine, if you're busy and there's 100 orders that come through, to say, oh yeah, I saw that it was a Sears or a yellow picking ticket, but I happened to print the wrong packing slip template, is a very, very easy thing to do. So by automating that packing slip, or even automating that email notification to have a different brand or look or feel, can save a lot of time and prevent a very, very costly mistake in your relationship with your trading partner. Oops, sorry. So here's an example of an email notification. Again, this is one that is, just a simple branding of Oz development. But whether you have multiple divisions inside of your company, and it might be Oz development and then Brian's professional services company. Well, when an email goes out, it needs to represent the brand that I purchased a product from. So this email notification can represent that brand. It also gives you a lot of flexibility around the messaging. This type of email notification can have maybe a coupon code to encourage a consumer to come back to you. It could have a link to your website that has technical documentation about a product that was ordered, or a link to a demonstration video, or a happy holidays type of message. So it's a marketing opportunity that can be automated through that direct email notification.
So here's a question about these branded emails and branded pack slips. It says, are these branded solutions unique to the MAS solution, or can they work with other back-end hosts?
Oh, yeah, it's a great question. I know today we're really focusing on the Sage MAS product line. but these can definitely be applied to other systems. You know, anything from a QuickBooks and Peachtree to Salesforce.com to, you know, Great Plains or Oracle or SAP or Magento. Any of those host systems, this same logic of a branded email or branded packing slip could be applied.
Okay. And then lastly, in terms of, you know, the documents, again, producing, you're shipping to that, you know, JCPenney, you know, for the most part, they demand a retail compliant label, an ASN, capturing that information in a streamlined way, you know, tying it into that shipping process, as opposed to potentially having a separate staging area for those type of shipments, applying the labels later. So being able to streamline that, really, again, having sort of a high-level process that's similar, and having the solution figure out what labels and documents get produced out of that process, as opposed to really designing different processes for each of the various sort of channels and deliveries. There's the demo. Okay, so just to summarize in terms of you know, the needs, that question about the template. I mean, what Oz development does with OZLINK is it pulls the information from the various sources, and you know, for the most part, it exists in that MAS 90, in that MAS 200 system, but sometimes it's complemented with another system. We really provide that integration and pulling the right information to create you know, all the various right labels and documents. So, for example, in an ASN, there may be, you know, package level detail that needs to be required that goes on that compliant label. That may or may not exist the way you have MAS 90 set up. But first and foremost is if you're going to do that integration, do you have all the information? Are you leveraging that? You know, are you going to leverage it from the sales order screen, the invoice screen, shipping entry screen? Those are decisions that, you know, when we talk to our customers using MAS 90-200, they may be turning on a new module to leverage some of this, but they don't have to. And some of that is, you know, flexibility around how OZLINK integrates with the MAS solutions. And then, you know, is WorldChip integrated? So we'll come across customers who maybe they do a batch integration at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, and, you know, real-time integration may provide additional value to provide visibility to the front office during the day, or maybe, you know, things like cost or tracking number aren't getting put back in properly, but the orders are flowing into WorldChip. So getting, you know, bi-directional real-time integration between the systems is really where the biggest value that we see is. We talked about the shipping rules. The other way that to think about it is, you know, walk back to your warehouse and see what, you know, what stickies exist on that ship station. And if there's stickies, chances are that might be something reminder for someone to remember. You know, Troy's example of that temporary person coming in during peak being productive is a good way to think about it. If you can achieve that goal, then you've you know, you've really simplified and automated a lot of your business rules. The branded email notification, again, you have to think about that in terms of what your capabilities are today, who your customers are, how that's going to increase value, obviously, for them, and maybe reduce, you know, give them a better experience, but also reduce inbound calls. We have customers who've cut their calls on terms of tracking packages, tracking shipments by 98%, where previously, where they hadn't been doing this, within a couple days of shipment, they'd be getting a number of calls in terms of, you know, where are my goods. We talked about the drop ship and ASN type compliant labels and branded pack slips, I think, quite a bit. But that's an area just to review if you do that, or maybe it's an opportunity, a business opportunity with new customers. You know, Amazon, eBay, those marketplaces, those are growing, and we see customers who have started out their business on those versus other customers who are much more established and now using that as a growth channel to get to new customers. And then large retailers, I think we've covered off as well.
Great. So I'm going to jump out of the PowerPoint slides and just show you an example of OZLINK working with MAS. I'm personally very visual, so sometimes just seeing something in action is really, really helpful. So here, in my particular instance, I have MAS 90 on my computer, and I'm leveraging the shipping data entry window as my my access to mass and sort of how I pack boxes and determine what items I'm packing. Earlier we had talked about, can I put in a temporary employee? And my demonstration is proof that you should be able to do that, because all we're going to ask the shipper to do is at the top of the screen here, I have this UPS button. When I click the UPS button, OZLINK is going to retrieve from Mass 90 or Mass 200 all of my relevant order information. So that's going to include the shipping address information, which just as a point of clarification, that's pulling the shipping address information from Mass real time. So if I have a situation where maybe I normally ship orders for one customer to a certain location, but they call and say, oh, this is a special order going someplace else. This is not looking up an address inside of WorldShip. It's pulling that address real time from Mass. It's also populating things like email address, reference fields, service level, and any of those business rules that we've been talking about are applied automatically without any user interaction. So I could have a business rule that says, based on the value, we want to require a signature, or insure the package, or I need to print an additional label when I process this shipment. What I want to have happen is the person in my warehouse drops the box on the scale and selects process shipment, and that's it. WorldShip will go ahead, it'll print out my shipping label in this case, and as I'm putting that shipping label on the box, OZLINK is going to go back and it's going to update Mass appropriately with the information that I determine I want back into Mass. In my particular case, I have my OZLINK configured so that I'm going to return back to Mass the shipping weight, which in this case was 5 pounds, the number of packages, I just shipped one package, the shipping cost. And the shipping cost could be the actual shipping cost that came from WorldShip. Maybe it's my negotiated shipping cost with UPS. Maybe it's the published shipping cost plus a $1 handling fee, or my negotiated rate plus $1 per package or something. So the business rules aren't necessarily applied just when we're bringing information into UPS WorldShip. Those business rules can also be applied as we're returning information back to Mass. One other area I thought I would mention quickly in looking at this update, as Brian mentioned, many companies today are opening new channels. So maybe I'm selling on eBay or Amazon, or I've got another e-commerce site like a Magento or something like that. Here we're showing Mass being updated, but we can also update those additional applications or sales channels. So if this happened to be an order that maybe came into my system through my Magento website, I can go back and I can automatically update Magento to mark that order as shipped and insert the tracking number if I want to. I'll show you inside of Mass, here's the tracking number that we just processed as well. So this is stored in the standard Mass tracking number field. If we happen to have multiple boxes in the shipment, all of my tracking numbers can be stored here.
And here's a question relative to the integration that came up. Is there a limit to the number of reference fields they can carry over into WorldShip?
It's really just limited by WorldShip. So in WorldShip, by default, you have 5 reference fields. But OZLINK can be quite creative. I've got a company that we were just working with where they sell high-end automotive wheels. And one of the things that they wanted to do in their reference field was they wanted to pass the item SKU into the reference field, but they also wanted some additional information about the wheel. I think it was mainly the wheel size. So in their case, they would oftentimes sell or send a box that was 4 wheels in it, and the SKUs didn't fit in one reference field. So with OZLINK, we were able to take information and sort of split that information apart and share the SKUs, the wheel sizes across multiple reference fields. So kind of a long-winded way of saying there's 5 fields that UPS will give you, but if we need to either combine information or separate information across those fields, that can be automated for you. So very, very good question. One other note that I wanted to mention, as that process is completed, as my shipping label is printed, we talked about that direct email notification, so sending an email that has your brand and your look and feel. When we talk about automating that, we mean that happens without the user needing to do anything. So as that shipping label prints, as MAS 90 is updated, that email can be triggered off to your customer. So it really can be an automated, sort of hands-off type of process.
Here's another question, Troy. So the new Sage 100 ERP, or MAS 90 version 213 is releasing, will support your shipping solution. We currently use ISM Shipping Link, which has been discontinued, but we need to have a solution to replace this previous one that's compatible with future versions of Sage software.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really good question. So when we get into working with, and I'm just going to grab another order here so we can process it. When we get into working with MAS 90 and MAS 200 many years ago, we became a Sage partner. And as part of that partnership program, we get access to the beta versions of the different products and the rebranding. And I always still use the MAS 90 200 name. My brain hasn't quite caught up with the new branding name of them.
Yeah, actually yesterday I got a note from a channel partner of Sage saying, when is Sage going to enforce the new brands? And I said, well, our customers typically talk to us about MAS 90, MAS 200.
Yeah.
But you know, Sage 100, Sage 200, MAS 90 still runs the business, still gets the orders out, and so consistency in terms of getting there, I guess, from a branding perspective.
Yeah. The key is that update mechanism. Inside of OZLINK, we have an automatic update mechanism. So because we're a Sage partner, as those new versions are released, your OZLINK software will be updated automatically to ensure that you have compatibility with those new versions. And that also holds true with the UPS WorldShip software. As those updates are applied, you don't need to think about and be worried, do I need to go get an OZLINK update or an OZLINK new version? The software will manage those updates automatically for you. All right, so just one more transaction we'll go through a little bit more real time. Again, in my particular scenario, I'm going to leverage the shipping data entry window. I'm going to click the OZLINK button. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put the package on the scale. I select process shipment. My shipping label or labels will print depending on my number of boxes. And as I'm applying those shipping labels onto my packages, MAS will be updated, again, based on my preference. In my scenario here, we're updating my shipping weight, my shipping cost, my tracking number or numbers that are part of that particular shipment. So the process sort of round trip should take me, well, it should take me longer to put the labels on the box than it should to share the information from Sage into WorldShip and then back to MAS after those labels have been printed. So hopefully that's a good example of how the process can look. We'll jump back over to, we have a couple more slides to share with you. But if there's any questions about that process, certainly just let us know.
Yeah, here's another question about, can OZLINK be used to help with UPS hazmat software with mapping of information and shipping labels necessary for hazmat docs?
So that's a great question, and that's one that usually requires a little bit further discussion. So with UPS WorldShip, we have the ability to send over, for lack of better terms, a hazardous ID. So in many cases with WorldShip, you'll have a database or a group of items that you've identified. You've got all of their descriptions, their hazardous classification, all that information inside of WorldShip. And there's an ID that will identify, you know, item A versus item B. If we have that same identifier inside of MAS, it could be your SKU, it could be a custom user-defined type field, then we can pass that information over to WorldShip and allow you to leverage all of WorldShip's capabilities around processing a hazardous or flammable type shipment.
And here's another question. So we're testing the beta version of WorldShip 2013 now. We use keyed imports on the UPS WorldShip and have several UDFs that are imported into the UPS WorldShip. I have set up extensive maps from MAS 90 to UPS WorldShip through the ISM shipping link. Can these maps be migrated over to OZLINK?
It's a great question. So you've got some good experience there. And the answer is yes. We can, really what ends up happening is you can export those existing maps, and then we can rename them and rebuild them as part of the OZLINK integration. And that will save us a lot of time in defining oftentimes business rules and things that you may have done, like with those user-defined fields you mentioned. So we can absolutely leverage that work that you've already done and make sure the extract of information out of maps is what you need it to be, as well as if you're using any of those maps to update any of those user-defined fields in addition to the standard maps fields.
And here's another one that came in. In selecting Quantum View Notify automatically, can that be selected? Currently, we have several other button clicks to make this happen. And if the email addresses doesn't exist in the older, there are conflicts, and that causes selecting Quantum View to fail.
Yeah, it's a good question and a pretty common one actually, where let's say 75% of the cases we have an email address. We don't want to tell WorldShip to check off that checkbox that says send email notification for those other 25% of the shipments. So OZLINK has the intelligence to say, if there's an appropriate email address associated with the order, let's pass it to WorldShip and let's set that flag to send a QVM email notification. But if that email address field is blank, let's just go ahead and not set that flag so the user doesn't experience any sort of error message. You can also, we sometimes see business rules applied to that where, based on, let's say, for example, order value, maybe I don't want to send a QVM email to my customer because I'm sending them an email that has my branding around it through OZLINK or some other means. But I want to get an email internally that, hey, this is an order, its value is over $10,000. If an exception should occur, send me an email internally so I can be proactive about it. So there's business rules that can be applied to that beyond just, is there an email address, is there not an email address. You can use that to leverage things like that exception email notification or even that delivery notification.
And it looks like that's it for the questions now. If you have any other questions, certainly feel free to enter them. Otherwise, we'll be finishing up here. And again, I thank you for your time. It looks like there is another question that's come in. What's the turnaround time for integration?
It really depends on your requirements. So if we took an example like the demonstration that I did a few minutes ago, that could be implemented for a company tomorrow in a matter of hours. If it was something where you had extensive business rules, that'll take a little bit more time to configure, as well as to do some quick testing as part of the implementation. On average, if I looked at it both from those sort of real out-of-the-box demonstration like I did and some really complex ones, on average it's probably 10, 12 business days from the time we agree on the configuration to the time it's implemented.
And another couple have come in we'll address. Does OZLINK support both small package and LTL freight shipments, import and export back to Mass 90? I currently manually type the UPS Freight Pro number and LTL freight shipments into the tracking button on the shipping data entry. Can this be set up to export to Mass 90 the same way as small package shipments?
Yeah, absolutely it can. If you actually go and look on our web page, and maybe I'll just transition over to that for a second. One of the sample videos that we have will process an LTL shipment. So you can use the website, you can use the YouTube channel, but there's an example of an OZLINK solution where it's processing a small package shipment, then an LTL freight shipment. So the answer is yes, and if you go out to the YouTube channel or onto the website, you can see a quick example.
And here, it looks like maybe the last question is, why should a customer select OZLINK over ShiftGear? And since someone brought that up, we'll throw it out there.
That's a great question. Did you write that, Brian?
I did not.
There's a number of things in there. To me, the couple of highlights, one is simply performance. I think the OZLINK solution will just process orders a bit more quickly. Two, the one that we hear about a lot is as new versions of Mass come out or new versions of WorldShip come out, that automatic update process and that automatic update process being included for every single customer that we have. There's no question, do you get that update, do you not get the update? If you're using OZLINK, you always get that update. Third is technical support. To me, when I buy something, if I have a problem, I want to make sure that I can call or I can email the company that I bought it from. We always include technical support with our solution. So if you have a problem, if something doesn't seem to be doing what you're expecting it to do, or you've had a hardware failure or something to that effect, we want you to feel comfortable to call us and get support from our team and not be wondering, hey, is this worth calling or not worth calling? And fourth, and as you can probably guess, we've kind of gone through this a few times with companies we've worked with, is the ability to customize the solution. So if you need, somebody earlier mentioned those user-defined fields mapped, or you need a business rule that updates a custom field in mass or updates another system, like an e-commerce system, or updates eBay directly, part of the design of OZLINK is the ability to be configured for your specific business. And to me, that's very, very critical in making sure that the shipping process is as efficient as possible and still maintaining the lack of mistakes that we can provide through automating those business rules.
And here's a question, another good one I like. It's, we have to enter a budget item. Can I speak to somebody about it? Again, feel free to reach out to us after this, and we'll reach out to you as well as follow-up to this. But you can send an email to sales@ozdevelopment.com, and we'll respond very quickly. So that's a question that came in. And then a comment that sort of supports the, again, we didn't write these, but it says, ShipGear does not support international. It is what it is. OZLINK is 100% better. So I love that. It's not a question, but I thought I'd bring it out here. So appreciate it. And it looks like that's it for the questions in the input. Very much appreciate your time. I realize everyone's busy, so taking 45 minutes, 50 minutes out to learn a bit about our solutions is greatly appreciated. Thank you, and we will post, this is recorded, and we'll post the slides in the recording. And as I said, if you have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out to either Troy or myself, or in general, sales@ozdevelopment.com. Thanks.